Once you find yourself in conflict with a narcissist, it's a virtual guarantee they're going to start playing head games with you. That's why I put together a new course. It's very extensive called Anger Games. I'm going to teach you how to manage anger and conflict with a narcissist. There's a link below that's going to show you how to register, and I hope that you find it to be very insightful. The longer you're around a narcissist, particularly if it's in a pretty close relationship that has quite a bit of consequence to it, the more you realize these people are terribly dysfunctional. With all of their control and manipulations and a lack of empathy and selfishness, etc., they have an uncanny knack for creating difficulty and many problems along the way. Of course, they don't see it quite like that. But then it begs the question, how self-aware are these individuals about who they are? One of the biggest questions I get is, do narcissists understand that they're narcissists? Do they know how and why they are so inappropriate? Do they understand the unhealthiness of their manner of life? And when they see themselves in a scheming mode, do they realize that this is not good? It's not smart. Do they understand how off-putting they are to so many other individuals? Or are they just simply blind and oblivious to all of that? Now, I'm going to give a twofold answer to this. Part of my answer is yes, they have a certain amount of self-awareness. And my greatest evidence of that is the fact that they keep secrets and they're deliberately evasive. And they will not talk about certain aspects about themselves that are unflattering. So the fact that they go into that dimension and it's like, there's certain things about me that I'm not going to talk about, I don't want you to know. It's like, yeah, because if we get into it, it's not going to make me look good. And so they have this evasiveness, which indicates there is a certain amount of self-awareness. But then the other side is, I do believe that there is a great deal of oblivion that they operate with, as evidenced by their insistent rationalization. And when I say rationalization, on a perpetual basis. They have concocted so many narratives about who they are and how things are supposed to be and how they want to be perceived, and they tell themselves falsehoods over and over that eventually they begin to believe it. So there's a level of self-awareness and then there's a level of oblivion coinciding on the inside of both of them. And ultimately, I believe that the oblivion begins to take over. Let me give you a simple illustration. I knew of a man who was caught on a home video camera in a domestic violence episode. And it was ugly. I mean, it was really ugly, screaming and all the rest. And later, when he got arrested and had all sorts of difficulties and had to go to counseling for anger management, etc. Over time, when the facts began to unfold, he basically said, "Oh, okay, that happened." And his comment was, to explain it, "Sometimes I can be intense," and that's as far as he went. But then, as you got to know him, then you begin realizing he would say, well, I don't want my family, I don't want my friends to know about this, nobody's to know about the arrest. That's the secret part. In other words, I know it's bad. And then he goes on to say, none of this would have happened had my girlfriend not been so inappropriate herself. So you have that self-awareness, and then you have the rationalization, and basically his comments could be summarized as, yes, that was me, but I can explain it. That's the way narcissists think. Yes, that might be me, but I can explain it if they're caught red-handed in their inappropriateness. Now, you see, every single one of us on the inside of ourselves is divided, and by that I mean there are parts of you that you like, there are parts of you that you don't like. Sometimes you have emotions that you wish weren't there, but there they are. Sometimes you have impulses. Sometimes you have attractions and desires, and you know that that's not going to take you to a good place. And so you're trying to have to figure out, how am I going to deal with all of that relative to who I want to be? And as a result, if you're going to move forward in a healthy kind of way, it requires a certain amount of introspection and honesty. All right, listen to these words: introspection, honesty, objectivity, humility, accountability. None of those characteristics or tendencies are what narcissists are going to sign up for. It's like, no, that hasn't worked very well for me. If I'm open and honest and self-reflective, all that's going to do is get me in trouble. They think so heavily in binary thinking. You're either on the team or you're not on the team. You're either strong or you're weak, or you're appealing or you're repulsive. And this binary thinking is so dominant that when you get to the point of saying, let's talk, it's like, I don't do that. In order for a person to know who they are, in other words, to have self-awareness and to know how they can make adjustments, it requires them to think on any number of topics. For example, what does this tell us about your sense of well-being, your sense of dignity and your integrity and your sense of worth from the inside out? How does all of that factor in? Because when you're so dysregulated, something's going on there. Let's talk about that. Or it would require them to think, well, how are you going to manage yourself in moments of conflict? What's your anger management style, and how does that work? What's the value of self-restraint? What's the value of patience? How can you mobilize empathy in such a way where you can build bridges of understanding? Or how can you regulate your cravings and priorities, etc.? Or do you understand where the other person is coming from so that you can learn how to match pitch with where they are? In other words, in order to be a well-balanced kind of person, it requires what we refer to as psychological competence. Being able to go into that kind of space and coming away not only with answers, but with answers that you're able to apply. And the narcissist is like, no, again, I don't like doing that. None of that kind of thinking was very clearly established. In the world of the narcissist, there's one huge thing that overrides so much of the insight possibility, and that is posing. They have to posture. And as long as they can posture correctly, then that takes care of whatever demons they don't want to have to look at. Their psychological competence is simply missing, and as long as they can put forward the proper image, then they're okay. And so what this does is it sets up all sorts of patterns that go in there. Again, there is a level of self-awareness, but they refuse, the part of the patterns are they refuse to reveal failures because that's going to make them look weak. They develop an ongoing perpetual fear of looking like the loser. That's that poser kind of mentality. They actually operate, many of them, with the imposter syndrome. I'm not about to let people know what's really going on the inside of me, and I hope that I can pull this off. They live by a tightly constructed false self. As long as I can pull that off, then I win. I'm okay. And as a result, this creates an inner narrative that excuses whatever hidden narratives, hidden problems they have on the inside. It's like you don't really need to know that kind of stuff, and they can rationalize with the best of them. So you can see that, there's a level of self-awareness, but this overarching rationalization is so profound that they become committed not to the rationalization. Yes, they become committed to deception, starting with deceiving oneself. Now, keep in mind the self-deception pattern has been building literally since age 3, and I mean that sincerely. And let's say you're dealing with a 53-year-old person, it can be building over such a long period of time that it becomes so deeply habituated and deeply embedded in who they are that it's like they just can't pull out of it. They're addicted to having that public approval kind of rating and just looking correct from the outside in, because going back to the whole notion of developing psychological insight, they don't have that. Therefore, they have nothing to draw upon that's going to make a difference in terms of how they think about how they get along with each other or with other individuals. So the question is, are they self-aware or are they oblivious? Yeah, the self-awareness is there up to a point, but the rationalization is so powerful, the self-deception is so deeply embedded that oblivion has completely taken over in the vast majority of the cases. Narcissists, when we talk about how aware they are, they're aware that we live in a culture of judgment. And so they have to figure out, okay, where am I going to find myself on the judgment scale? And let me get to the top of that. And as a result, their thinking is very juvenile. If at most, they don't reflect on life and love. They dread being caught, and so they spend so much energy covering up and creating false impressions. They're almost completely incapable of identifying the hidden loneliness that they carry. Because inside it's like, I don't think anybody's going to believe me. I don't think anybody's going to accept me. I don't think anybody knows me really. And so that's what I mean when I say they have a hidden loneliness. And you can't go into that space if you don't have reflective thinking. They don't have a sense of meaning or purpose beyond winning over you. And when I say meaning and purpose, plugging into transcendent thinking like kindness and love and helpfulness and making a true difference in the lives of other individuals, investing in life. And as a result, their way of life requires suppression. It requires dishonesty. It requires blame shifting. That's what they're committed to. So those of us who are here on Team Healthy can say, well, I've got some of those inner conflicts too. I've got my inner flaws and tensions, but what I'm going to do is spend my entire life sifting it out and becoming aware and staying open and honest and receiving input. And the narcissist is like, no way, sucker. That's too much work, and I'm afraid of what I might find. And so they just go on in their oblivion, partially aware of how inappropriate they are, but having the whole thing explained. And so the net result is these are people that you can't count on, which is why we say, they tend not to change. You can't count on it because the tools just aren't on the inside. They've invested far, far too much psychological and emotional energy in propping up their own deception. It's really sad. So, yeah, there's a certain amount of self-awareness, but self-awareness, like I say, based on their secretive, but it does no good unless you do something with it, and they're not going to do anything with it. I vote for oblivion in terms of explaining them. Okay, I hope that this gives you some awareness of what you're dealing with. And as you know, I'm going to keep more videos coming your way. I hope it helps you understand what you're up against. Hit that subscribe button. We're going to keep more videos coming your direction. Many of you, when you're dealing with something like this, can say, well, this being the case, I need somebody to help me out, which is why I'm sponsored by the people at betterhelp.com. I've been referring people to them for years, and it's so helpful when you can find a therapist that'll say, I'd like to know you, and let's do that psychological competence, and let's get in there, and then they'll walk you through it to where you really feel like you have your sense of meaning and purpose. As the need is there, please go through the link below and get the assistance that you would need. It's an investment in yourself, and you will not regret it, I hope. In addition, I've also put together courses. I'm retired as a therapist, but what I've done is I've pulled together my thoughts on various topics, large topics. My latest course is called Anger Games, and I'm so pleased with it because you can tell so much about a person's healthiness by watching how they manage anger and conflict. We have my courses available, and when I'm talking about that, 25 videos at least, and guided handouts and questions per course. Anger Games, This Is Me, Ready, Set, Connect, free to be. They're all on the website. You can go check those out, along with my webinars, which are of a different nature. They're 90-minute presentations. And then in addition to that, we have access to my podcast, articles, my books, etc. I'm hoping you can be a self-aware person. And I'm hoping you're not going to hide behind rationalizations so much that it becomes central to everything that you are, and it creates the false self. We don't need to do that. And in doing so, we can at least look at where that person is and say, that's going to become part of my motivation to go in the much healthier direction. And as you do, I hope that you find a certain amount of joy and contentment knowing that you're trying to have a steadiness. And ultimately, I hope that it can lead you into your space of internal peace.